Hey guys, just a small video here today. Thought I'd share this with you, and wondering if anybody out there has had these same issues. So I rebuilt these carburetors, and we put them on the car back in May. It is now the 1st of December, and last week I just couldn't get the car started. I had cranked this thing for over an hour, trying different things with fuel adjustments and timing. I thought, what the heck is wrong with this thing? Because the last time I drove it, it ran fine. I shut it off. I didn't get a chance to drive the car for literally about 4 weeks. And I know you can have some evaporation problems with the fuel in the float bowls, which could be an issue. So I thought, well, maybe that was it. Anyhow, no fuel delivery problems, no fuel pressure problems. Just couldn't get the car started. Eventually I did, valving the plugs along the way because it had been sitting so long, and just cranking it and giving it gas, trying to get things started. But we got it running, and it just run terrible. I couldn't even get it out of second gear. It would idle. I could get it up to maybe 1,500 RPMs. After that, it would just start bucking and carrying on, and I tried everything. I couldn't get it to work. So I thought, well, maybe there's some blockage in the passageways. Maybe our air correctors here are blocked. I mean, it could be anything. But it definitely merits taking the carburetors off and having a look. So here's what I found. These floats here were switched out. I had originally the brass floats in there. And they're probably very good, probably depending on the source of where you get them. These I ordered from Italy thinking, well, wow, they're going to be a lot better. Coming directly from those guys, rather than who knows where they're manufactured. But anyhow, here's what I got. And I tried leveling out the floats, adjusting them. I kept coming up with different adjustments and all kinds of things. I just couldn't get my float levels right, and no matter what I did, I just couldn't get them dialed in. And here's why. So look at this rear float here. This is on the passenger side. This moves up and down freely, and this one here is stuck. It's not stuck on the bottom of the float bowl. It's actually stuck on the outer housing here, right on the edge. And so what's happened is our toxic fuel that we use these days has swollen these floats to the point where they're just not even functionable. You get nothing out of those. So this one's just too fat now, won't work. So no doubt the other side is the same way. And I apologize here for the lighting here because it's getting kind of dark, and I just wanted to share this with you as I take it apart. So what I'm going to do is roll through this, get some better lighting on here for you. Roll through this carburetor. I'm going to check everything, check the galleries again, and see what's going on, if I have proper progression activity, because that's really where it's showing up. But yeah, just even getting it started, it's like there's no fuel. The symptoms were it was just not getting any fuel, and I know it was pumping fuel because I could see the fuel pump was working. I have a clear bulb on that where I can actually see fuel going into it. In my accelerator nozzles, they were pumping fuel too, and I measured those out, and they were all pumping evenly, but just not enough fuel in the bowls to get this thing going. So let me roll through this. Let me try to figure out another solution. Obviously, these floats are no good. So buyer beware. I got these on eBay from a vendor out of Italy. Okay, so I pulled the most offensive float out first while it was still soaked in gasoline. We'll just do a comparison here between a original float, 25.3, and this one here just feels heavier. But this thing's so fat and absorbed with fuel, it's actually way heavier. So that's going to throw things off considerably by itself, even if it wasn't frozen. And then one other quick comparison I just want to show you here between the two styles. And this one, I just don't remember this being this thick when I put them in. I mean, I looked at that when I pulled the top off and just going, wow, that doesn't even look like the same floats I put in there. But I just slid back in a brass float, and you can see how much clearance we have. This is fully bottomed out around this area here and here. And in the front as it's sitting on the bottom. Got quite a shim stack there. Go all the way down. Right, this one here sitting on the bottom, we're already resting up against the housing here, which is not good. And I'm actually touching the body, so these aren't going to go down very far at all. That's it. That's all the farther down those go. But there is the difference after a few months sitting in fuel. Okay, so same thing found in our second carburetor. I've got this one pulled apart, gone through, and readjusted everything, put back together, and ready to move on. Our pile of floats over here all weigh in at about 26.8 to 9 grams, splitting on the pivot points here. Way too thick and definitely not going to work out. So the vendor on eBay, I did contact him, let him know what was going on, and apparently these were ethanol compatible according to the advertisement he was running. But I showed him the pictures, told him what was going on, and his reply basically was first time he's heard anything like this in the 14 years he's been selling Weber parts. So not going to get much help out of him. And then the other thing I did while I got the carburetors apart and on the bench is I opened up all the progression and idle circuits and ran some tools down inside there, flashlight, carburetor cleaner, compressed air. Just made sure there's no blockage or anything in there that could possibly be hanging up, and everything checked out, was clear, but we did verify that also. And then another thing I did is I ran a pin set through all our jets, all our orifices, and just made sure everything was the correct size and correct jetting and balanced to each other, and we checked out there okay. So mainly the problem here with this carburetor issue is just going to be the floats, the splitting and swelling that goes with them. Okay, so I've got a printout here from the manual that I've done some highlighting on. And I thought what I try to do is, for you guys who don't really understand float geometry and how it affects your drivability of the car, this might help a little bit if I can explain it correctly. Anyhow, so we have the float gauge, which has two sets of lines on it. And from what I gather, this lower set of lines is for the float level of the Zenith carburetors. And this top set of lines, top two up here, are for the Webers. So if we're aiming to be in here, and we end up somewhere in the middle here, or somewhere over the top here, it's going to upset the geometry of our floats. And we have a total of 4 floats. Let's take a look and see exactly what would happen if that was the case. Okay, so let's assume in a perfect world, our float geometry is exactly right on the money. So here is our fuel level. Here is our float geometry with our needle and seat and our distance, everything set here at 18 millimeters. So this means if our needle and seat shuts off the fuel, it will balance off at this specific level, which is the 2 lines at the top of the fuel gauge. Okay, and as we carry this across the 3 different chambers, you've got 2 float bowls. You got one here. All right, so that's our level. And then right next to it, you have the emulsion tube well that draws fuel from the bowl. And those 2 levels are going to be the same. Whatever this fuel content is, you're going to have the same content in your emulsion tube well. If we come over to this float, and let's just say in exaggeration we're way off, okay? So then your emulsion tube level on this side is going to be down here. It's going to be lower than this one over here. And why would that be a problem? So what happens is you start your car, you're on your idle circuit, and you're drawing fuel basically only from the first progression hole at the bottom of your throttle plates. As you start to open up the butterflies, you start to draw progression through the top 2 progression holes, and that sucks more fuel in. That's starting to make like a transition. That helps pick up the speed of the engine, and also as you're pressing on the gas, you are injecting fuel down here to pick up any slack that might be happening during this transition. Okay, so then you're going to open these throttles even farther. And eventually that's going to cut off the vacuum that's pulling the fuel out of your first progression hole and your second progression holes, and then they're just going to stop functioning. Your idle or your accelerator pump nozzles will be pretty much discharged by that point, so you're not going to get any additional fuel out of your idle circuit or accelerator pump. So then that means that the vacuum that's being rushed in by this air coming down your cylinders, it's the vacuum that siphons out from your fuel bowl up your emulsion tube, comes into your pre-atomizer, and is sucked into the engine. It's this transition here which is what makes your car run really good. If your float level is too low, then it will take longer for this transition to take place. So you'll have a flat spot or hesitation because it's just taking too much vacuum coming in here to pull the fuel through. If your float is at the right level, when the right amount of vacuum takes place, it's going to be siphoning the fuel off the top of your emulsion tube. And these emulsion tubes have holes in them. You got an air corrector, everything. All the geometry's already been predetermined. So if you've got a hole near the top here, and this is set up correctly, and your floats are setting correctly, the second you have the right amount of vacuum, and you no longer are running on your progression circuit down below, you're going to run on your main circuit here, right, which is drawing fuel from the well of your emulsion tube, pre-atomizing, and going down in. If this one is lower or higher than this one in relation to it, then the timing is going to be off. Okay, so you're going to have fuel coming out of this one. You're not going to have any fuel coming out of this one. So you're going to have two of them that are going to run at the same time, and one of them is going to run independent of the other two, because one float bowl takes care of two emulsion tubes, and one float bowl only takes care of one on each side. So you have a total of 4 floats. If these guys aren't in sequence with each other on both sides of the engine, then your timing is going to be off. You're going to be hitting and missing on some cylinders, and that's why you're going to have a problem with performance and drivability if your floats aren't correct. So it's really important to get the right weight, to get the right geometry, to get everything just right on those floats. And if your floats are swelling, like these ones here, then what's happening, that's changing the float volume. They're getting heavy. It's changing the way the float rises and falls in your float bowl. And this has to stay constant. So we can't have too much fluctuation in here to keep running and good performance. Okay, so that's pretty much how the floats work and why it's important to have everything in perfect symmetry with each other and good geometry on your float levels. And then one other thing, I had a friend, Curtis, reach out to me. Curtis is from Texas, and he has a couple of Porsches, one of them real nice, 356. And I was talking to him about the problem, and he recommended an app that, depending on what state you live in, there are some gas stations that actually sell ethanol-free fuel. So we don't have a lot of that here in Nevada, and I don't imagine California's going to have much either. But there are some states that are ethanol-free and quite a few stations. So you could put that on your app and maybe just keep the ethanol-free fuel in your carbureted cars. Okay, guys, well, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.